These are the fun things that we'll talk about in this class, how to run a Zoom. So we're going to talk about Jupiter Rising. This is my newest offering specifically for people who want to be teachers. This is something I have been kind of sitting on for a while and thinking about for, a few years now, talking to my friends about, and I'm really excited to finally have the manifesting generator energy pop up that's like, yes, this is the thing you need to do right now, and let's dive into it. I'm just really excited about how it all came together, and I'll give you all that information today. So we're going to go through a little bit of an introduction to the course and to me, if you don't know much about me. We will talk about what the course is meant to be, who it's meant to be for, and I will give you the full overview of all the things that we're going to go through in the 12 weeks. And then I'll shoot out that enrollment link for you. And, talk about pricing and all that other fun stuff too. So, hi, I'm Bethany. If you haven't taken one of my classes, then hello for the first time. I'm excited to have you here. And if you've been in my classes, then you already know a little bit about me because I usually give an intro at the beginning of every class. But what I don't always talk a lot about is my experience as a teacher. And so that's what I'm going to share with you guys today. So I've been an instructor for it'll be 17 years at the beginning of 26, and specifically in the beauty space. So I started as a cosmetology instructor, into aesthetics, into massage. And I started in schools, but the last few years I have focused on my own business and grown it into a six-figure business just focused on online education courses and in-person classes. And something that I have really focused on in my teaching career is the fact that teaching is not just about telling people what you know. So we can sit here all day and say things to people. That does not mean that they learn them. Like, think about why Miss Frizzle was such an iconic character. It wasn't because she sat in a science class and gave her students information. It was because she took them on these unique experiences and journeys, and we got to go along with her as the viewer. And a lot of us learned a lot about science or the body that way. And with Bill Nye, right? That's another great inspiration is it wasn't just the telling, it was the doing and the seeing and being involved in that experience. And it's our job to do things like that in our space. So it's not just the telling, like I said, it's not just the research-based, evidence-based teaching, analytical side of things. It's also that intuition and compassion and life experience and connection and things that we bring into it that you can't just get from a textbook or that you can't just give by standing up in front of a group and giving a speech, right? We have to lead people on a journey. And so what I've been wanting to do is create a way for other people to learn how to create that journey and how to do it really well, of course, but also how to do it in a very safe and compassionate way. Because that's another thing I find is very much lacking in teaching is you have the teachers who are the gurus and you're just expected to take everything they say as the Bible essentially, it's the way they say it is the way it is, and that's the end of the story. And that's not really how things are, right? We all have unique life experience and different things that change our view of the world and the way that we take in information. So I really want the energy of this to be about that. So a little more detail here. I always wanted to be a teacher since I was a little kid. And I thought that that's what I was going to go to college to do. And then I had a baby really early in life. So I had my first child when I was 19. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to go to college, but I could go to beauty school and have a good career pretty quickly. So I went to beauty school and immediately I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to do what the teachers did for me, which is really gave me a space to be safe and compassionate about what I went through in life. So I wanted to do that. And luckily, the school that I went to had a really amazing program. So we went through 800 hours of training where every week we would sit in a class, we would learn something, but then we would all present in front of each other. Usually there's 5 or 6 of us enrolled with the program at one time. So we would all stand up, give a lesson, and then everybody would go through their feedback form, fill it out, and then they would tell you everything you did well and everything you did wrong. So, they would count how many times you said or so. They would just tear everything apart. And it was a very unique experience for that reason. It wasn't always fun, but it was very helpful. And as I grew as an educator and went to work at different schools and things like that, I learned that that was not everybody's experience. So sometimes people would go through a 700-800 hour program and never teach a student. So they would never have the experience of teaching and getting feedback. And you would see that in how they taught their students. Like they had no idea what they were doing. So I was really lucky that I went through that, even though like at the time I was like, this is a little traumatizing. But after we would teach each week, we would then go teach to the students. And so we would have an instructor who like oversaw the class, who we would teach to their class something that was being taught in that program. And then they would give us feedback, and it really kind of layered on, because we did it first and got feedback from each other, then we were better able to give it to the students and so on and so forth. It was a really great experience. And like I said, not everywhere did things like that. And so when I went to different schools, then I started to help them to create things like certification programs where they could, hold their instructors to a higher standard and put them through some of the things that I went through so that they could be better teachers for their students. And that was really also very interesting and fun, but I got really burnt out teaching because like if you have ever worked in a beauty school, it can be really hard. Most of you guys went to beauty school because you're in like hair, massage, or aesthetics. So like it is a lot. So I got burnt out. I quit teaching and I decided to start doing facials. And I loved that. But I also really miss teaching. Like every job that I had along the way, I was like integrating teaching into it in some way. Like in some places I was doing training on product, and some places I was doing training on protocols. And I really missed that. So I went back to teaching in a school. And in the next like couple years that I was teaching in schools, this is up to about like 2022, 2021. I honestly can't remember which year it was. I should know this, but I don't remember. But in that like time span of when I was teaching 3 or 4 years, I was rewriting curriculum. I was helping turn our program into an online program because COVID happened and everybody was doing everything online. So I got a lot of great experience there, training new instructors and things like that. And I just really felt like at some point, why was I creating for someone else when I could create for me, right? Why am I like giving all this time and energy creating curriculum and writing lessons and like trying to make our education better when I could just like charge people for that on my own and make more money than I was making working in a school, right? And also it would be mine. It would be like the way that I could do it. I was trying to teach things like gua sha, and they wouldn't let us teach gua sha to estheticians and just like weird little things, right? That I was like, I want to be able to do this. So I planned out teaching my first course, and then I left teaching in the school and I launched my first class, which was the holistic facial certification. And that class is still my #1 class. I love it. It's grown into a beast of like 30, 40 hours of video and like lots of activities and things that it really is very comprehensive. So now in the last couple years, I decided to go to massage school. I was able to become an approved instructor for the national board. That way I can give people continuing education credits for massage. And I have done pretty much everything along the way. I've tried communities, I've tried subscriptions, I've tried memberships, teaching in person, all of that. So I've learned so much, and I really think that gives me a little bit of a unique opportunity to share with people what I've learned. So you can not repeat my mistakes, or repeat them if you want to, because they'll work out better for you, even though they didn't work for me, right? In the years of doing this, what I found and what I want to change with what we're doing is that when I wanted continuing education for aesthetics, it just wasn't there. Before I went into massage, before I went into teaching my own thing, like I was trying to take classes on facial massage and there were like 3 options, and they only came around once in a while, and they were like thousands of dollars. And that doesn't work for everybody, even though it works for some. And then, those 3 classes were all just a repeat of one class. So you take one, you took them all kind of thing, because everybody was working off the same model. And then when I wanted continuing education for massage, when I went to massage school, oh my gosh, like even though it's very plentiful, it's also very hard to find and book because the websites are like outdated or just poorly designed. Like I remember I was trying to buy a continuing education class at some point and I could not check out. Like it would not let me check out. And so I emailed the email on the website, and they were like, we don't know what's wrong. Let us try to find this out. And they ended up having their IT person contact me. Now I have to do the work to pay you the money. It shouldn't be hard, right? It should be very easy. Or like sometimes I would want to take a class because I've heard good things about it, and then I go to the website and the marketing is just so strange. The visuals are strange. I'm just like, what am I getting myself into, right? Like it's a very weird environment. There needs to be like a new, fresh, it needs to be invigorated for sure. A lot of, like I said, a lot of the old school teachers and the lineages of like things that are passed down, they won't let them teach online. And I think that really limits our ability to reach people because not everybody can travel, not everybody can take days off of work. Online classes, there is a very huge demand for them for a reason, okay? And I do think that they work even when we're teaching hands-on stuff. You just have to do it the right way. You know, some students, they just don't like it and they're not going to do it, and that's totally fine. There's all sorts of vague statements and false marketing. I feel like there's a lot of lack of transparency that I'm finding when I look for things. Like it doesn't always say what is included. Sometimes you can't find the price and you have to like email them to find out what the price is. And I just think that's kind of ridiculous. Like I said, everything's a repeat. I was having a hard time, let's say, trying to find a myofascial release class because they're all myofascial release classes. So, like, what am I getting from you that's different, right? And then when I'm taking classes, like sometimes I find they're just so poorly organized or ran, especially in person. Like you show up and they're not even set up yet, or they like have to go through their paperwork because they don't know what they're doing because it's not really their class. They're just teaching it for somebody. And like I've taken so many classes where there's just no concern for people who are different or sensitive. So, I'm going to give myself as an example. When I go and take a class, I find it really hard to sit in a chair all day. Like I need to sit on the ground or like on a pillow. I need to move. I need to sit with my legs crossed. Like there's just different things that work for my body. And I've been in classes where they're like, no, you can't do that. Or it's just like so straightforward that like if your brain works any differently, you're just done. You can't focus, you can't pay attention, right? So there has to be some sort of modification for that where we're being flexible with people, right? And we're keeping all those things in mind and even keeping in mind that not everybody learns the same way. You can't do the same thing for everybody. You have to have different ways of teaching things. And, I've come across all sorts of people who just were never taught to present. So whether like they just don't know how to stand in front of people and talk, or you can tell they're really nervous, or they know the information so well, and that's why they thought they should teach, but they don't know how to share that information. A lot of them just think like if they show you, then that's enough, or if they tell you, then that's enough. And if you've ever tried to teach anybody anything, like you go in with this mindset of this is how I'm going to do this, but you have to be ready to flip when it doesn't work for them and add these different elements that do work. And so having all those tools in a toolbox is very important for being able to give a really quality class. Times have changed. People want online classes more than they ever did before. So there's this like really great niche that we can get into because it's still not that popular for people to teach online classes. They exist, but they're not as common. And a lot of that is because the older generation who's been running all of our trainings for the last however many years doesn't want to get into it. They don't believe that it can be effective. It's just not the way we do things. And so I think that there's a really great opportunity for those of you who are interested in doing that. And I also think that people are just sick of gatekeeping at this point and they want more fresh voices, more like, they want the quantity of like having more information at their fingertips and the experience from a person versus like getting that information from AI. But they also want the quality, right, that comes with like a really well organized course and like going in person and having this really unique and wonderful experience. So kind of like adding luxury to what we offer people, or, in my point of view, it's more about like the compassion and the nervous system regulation and things that come in with creating a really great quality class. I really don't believe that you have to be doing something for a really long time, like, 20 years, or that's great value, yes, but that is not the only thing that makes somebody good at something or able to share information. It doesn't change the value of what you have to say because we all have life experience that makes us valuable instructors or invaluable teachers to specific students. We will have a target market and it won't be everybody. And that's kind of what we have to figure out through figuring out what kind of teacher we're going to be. That's really my inspiration and like the why behind this. Let's get into the what. So what we're going to be doing is spending 12 weeks together in this mentorship. And my thought process behind this is we're focusing on, aesthetics, massage, anything in a surrounding industry, acupuncture, fitness, anything like that. I've been really inspired by my Instagram algorithm has changed from like facials late and massage lately to fitness because I've been working out a lot. And I'm really inspired by how like fitness influencers do this because they will create these like really cool, unique programs. One of them that I found is a program that is called the Assassin Academy, and it is all about how to train yourself with the inspiration to be like a fictional book character that if you're into reading fantasy, like you may know what I'm talking about if you've read like ACOTAR or anything like that. So it's like train like these characters. And I thought that was like a really cool, unique way to make money and be flexible with your life. Like I've been really inspired by that and kind of trying to figure out how to put this together. And I think that 12 weeks is maybe the magic number. I guess we'll see when we go through it together. But we do need a lot of time because there's a lot of information and it needs to be absorbed. And you need to be able to work on things while we're doing this. And you can't do that if we do it in a short amount of time, which is another reason why I think this works really well online versus in person, because there's just not really a great way to do a 12-week mentorship in person without devoting a lot of time and energy to it and not being able to be flexible, right, with your timings. What we will do is we'll work on presentation skills. So how to speak in front of people and get your point across in a way that's like clear and concise without being too wordy or without being too vague. We'll learn to lesson plan and organize curriculum. So really like diving into the nitty-gritty of how one lesson works, and then how do we put that into a scaffolded plan where we're building upon skills into a larger overall goal or curriculum. We'll definitely go through the steps of planning out online or in-person offerings. So whichever you decide to do, whether it's your first one or, you're reorganizing an old one or just honing in on something that you've already taught, whatever it is, we're going to plan that out from beginning to end. We're going to spend some time figuring out who you are as an educator, of course, like I just talked about, like what makes you unique and what's your selling point and, how do you market yourself? What's your brand? Along with identifying and strategizing for that ideal student. So who do you want to take your classes? Like I said, it can't be everybody, but who are you actually talking to? We will definitely talk about learning types and how to engage different learning types and different styles. And that kind of correlates in with like people who are neurodivergent or like who need different types of resources. And then we will apply a trauma-informed lens to our work. In the background, that is always running for me, this like idea of making sure that it's not that we're not triggering people, but we're being really careful about how we do things because people only learn when they feel safe. So we have to make sure that there's this overarching theme of like making people feel comfortable with us, making them feel comfortable enough to grow because growth is uncomfortable. And they have to feel like you're a safe place to land or what you're offering is a safe place to land. Is it an okay place to ask questions? Even the way that we respond to questions can inform that person of whether or not they're safe, right? So, or like the ease of using your course can make someone feel safe or unsafe in that environment. So these things are all focused on that trauma-informed lens of like how do we get people to stay close to their vagal state or at least be able to come back to the vagal state when they get triggered by something. In person, this is even more important because a lot of times when people come into you and they're training with you one-on-one, they're doing something that's uncomfortable or new and they get defensive. They get triggered basically and they start having like a fight or flight response. I've even been to classes where people leave and don't come back. Like they paid thousands of dollars for this and they decide not to show up for the rest of the class. Not one that I've taught, thank God, but ones that other people have taught. There's a lot that could be done in the beginning to just make people feel like they could come back or they could ask the questions or get what they need out of that class instead of feeling like it wasn't worth coming back to it. So overall, like I want to address roadblocks for people. A lot of times the roadblock that people run into before they even start is like they don't know what to do. Like they literally have no idea where to start, or they feel like they're not qualified to do this. And so those are the big things we're going to talk about, as well as like technology. So how do you use all the technology that's involved if you want to go online? And even if you're doing stuff in person, there's a certain amount of technology you have to be comfortable with. Feeling overwhelmed by like all the options and all the things you have to do and like how to even organize everything. That lack of direction, like I want to do this, I don't know what I want to do. Or imposter syndrome, like I talked about. Fear, the fear of like someone saying that your course isn't good or whatever, all those fears, we'll talk about those as well as talk about marketing. How do you actually market this? really it's the like what to do, how to do it, why you're doing it, when to pivot and how to do that, and how to know that you're doing it really well. Those are like the main things we'll talk about. Who is this for? I mean, if you read the email, you saw who I think this is for, but really it's for anyone who wants to offer online classes or workshops or in-person trainings, but doesn't know where to begin. It could be to other professionals or it could be to clients. So like it really doesn't matter. It's going to apply across the board. If you feel like something is missing in your field, whether it's massage, aesthetics, astrology, whatever, and that thing that's missing is like depth or like embodiment or soul, like character, personality, and you want to create something better, I think that this would be a great opportunity to do that. Also thinking about like where you're at in your journey, if you've been teaching before, but maybe you never received formal guidance, this I was really thinking about Texas recently. They removed the requirement to have an instructor license in order to teach cosmetology or aesthetics or barbering. So there's no requirement at all. Like you just have to have worked in the industry and then you can go teaching people. So that's like not a great setup for a good learning experience for the students. And then for massage, we're only required to do like 40 hours of adult learning education in order to be a licensed teacher in Texas, which also like you could get from anywhere, and who really knows what that entails. That's kind of what I was thinking about. In other industries too, like you can go just teach continuing education classes and have no experience teaching. There's no requirement, right? So if you've never received formal guidance, I think that would be this would be really great and helpful. If you're really interested in trauma-informed facilitation, maybe like you're already teaching, but you want to add that element to it, I think this would be great as well. And course structure. So how do you put everything together? Also, like anyone who wants to train employees, like if you have a business with multiple employees and you want to create a solid training program where they can go through even videos, I think is a great idea because then you don't have to be training people all the time. But you want it to be really comprehensive and consistent. I think this would be great for that as well. Some of us were licensed instructors, never really learned how to teach, and that's a problem. But even if you were, sometimes you just need a little more. Maybe you want to offer continuing education credits and you don't know where to go with that or how to do that. We're going to talk about that at some point. If you are, highly sensitive, intuitive, neurodivergent, and you want to learn how to make a space for those types of people, I think there's a lot of room for growth in that department. Or if you really want this like hands-on experience, because we will be doing things together as a group with a community, and it is obviously long form with the 12 weeks that we're going to be doing it with. I think that anybody who feels called to step into this, if this feels aligned for you, it's going to be a great opportunity. Because we will be focusing so much on like every assignment we do along the way is meant to help you to create whatever you're trying to create. It can be a great space for accountability and structure while you work on the things that you want to work on for 2026. And we're going to be doing this through the lens of our archetype Jupiter. So that is where the name of the class comes from. Jupiter is the great expander, and to me really represents this aspect of like higher learning with the desire to know why and not just the how. And really trusting in your ability to do things and trusting in your ability to guide people through a certain level of uncertainty by building trust with them. And one thing that I really love the idea of is like being able to pass on wisdom to the next generation and like expand this collective consciousness of like things that we know, right? I've always loved teaching for the reason that in the beginning when I was doing hair and when I was working in skin, even like the thing that I loved about it was helping people. Like you're helping people in some way, even if it's just like the connection of being with you for an hour while you work on them, giving them that hands-on touch. But when you're teaching people to do things like that, you are teaching them to like amplify your effect. So you get more of an effect on the world when you're teaching people how to do things the way that you think that they should be done. And I love that idea of passing that wisdom along a lineage. And then I think too, what I find in this like archetype of Jupiter is a certain amount of generosity, wanting to share in order to elevate the people around you and not just to dominate people around you. Like we're not teaching, at least if you're joining this class, you are not wanting to teach because you want to be known as like the world's best teacher and like the leader in your industry. You're teaching because you want to elevate everybody around you into being the best that they can be. It's really about, I think, teaching perspective and not just about teaching information. And our job is to remind the students and help the students expand through like focusing on their potential and helping them to see parts of themselves that they aren't able to see for themselves. Hopefully, that is also my role in this class. And what I want to do for you is to help you to see the parts of yourself that you can share with others to help them expand and what wisdom you have and lived experiences you have that would be really helpful for others. So our program will consist of an online course, live lessons, and some amount of community participation. The online courses, the modules will be a mixture of reading, recorded lectures, and assignments weekly. And they will be like the recorded lectures will be fairly short. So it's going to be building on something that we're going to talk about in the live lesson. And I will open them 1 week at a time so it's not too overwhelming where you feel like you have to like jump ahead at all. The goal is to complete your online course modules before we get into the live lesson for the week so that we can use the assignments that you completed to kind of build on what we're going to talk about in that live lesson. The live lessons will be goal is 90 minutes, but knowing myself, they'll probably be closer to 2 hours, and they'll be once a week on whatever the important topics of the week are. The day and time will be the same every week, but I haven't decided that yet because I want to see where we have participants from and work out how the time zones and everything are going to be best because we do have people potentially joining from like Europe and Australia. So trying to find a way to fit that in, plus all the time zones in the US. So everything will be recorded though. So if you're not able to attend a live lesson, you'll have that all in your online course. I just feel like the participation aspect is very important. So that's why I'm trying to work it around everyone who joins to make sure that we can try to get as many people there as regularly as possible. And then for our community, the community will actually be open immediately when you join this class. So you'll have access to each other. But our closed community will have things like challenges, or sometimes like your weekly assignment will be posted to the community so that the community members can see it and comment on it. Or maybe the assignment is to go comment on someone else's post. And that just allows us to use each other as accountability buddies, right? So we're creating this accountability system through our community. We are getting that step-by-step guidance through our assignments and everything, and you're learning what to do in our live lessons. You have all those aspects together. Week 1, we're going to talk about defining your why and what you have to offer, the basics of polyvagal theory, so what it means to be trauma-informed, and kind of go through like what's trauma-informed versus trauma-aware and like these terminologies that you may see in the space. Week 2, we're going to talk about the way that people learn. We'll use various meaning-making systems. One example that you're all probably familiar with is VAK, or visual auditory kinesthetic. So things like that, not that exact one because that's so basic. We're going to identify ourselves and where we live within these meaning-making systems because it tells us what kind of instructor we are. I am a person who focuses on the big picture, and the details are kind of lost sometimes because it's not important to me. The way that you would describe this is like I go into a forest and I'm like, ooh, a forest, versus someone else goes into a forest and they're like, ooh, trees, and they're like looking at the detail and the trees and the bark and things like that, but they don't see that they're in a forest. Okay. The people who are very detail oriented and like focused on these little nitty-gritty things can sometimes feel like I'm not giving them what they need. And I know that about myself. And so you also need to know that about yourself so that you can try to focus on making sure you hit those points for different people. We will discuss things like triggers when it comes to nervous system responses and learning blocks and what's going to prevent people from learning based on our like trauma-informed lens and what to do about it, because you can't avoid triggering people. Like I said, the goal is not to never trigger people because we're just people pleasing all the time. But the goal is to have the space where people can experience that and still be able to come back into some sort of safety. Week 3, we're going to dive more, building on what we know now, into what type of teacher we want to be and what your own special powers are and how you're going to use those in your practice. And then in week 4, we will start lesson planning. So really we'll start lesson planning with like one lesson at a time and one short topic. And then in the next week, we'll talk about scaffolding and building that into a multi-lesson course. So for example, if you're going to teach something for one day, you're going to do a one-day in-person class or training, you probably are going to have 3 to 5 different lessons for that day because you're not going to just teach the one thing all day long. Usually that's not how it goes. Or maybe you're transitioning into different ways of learning that content. You're not just going to sit there and talk to someone all day. So that's what scaffolding is like, building that out in a structured way, but then also taking something like a 12-week online course and figuring out how to start at the beginning and build those layers one by one into the final project, the final cumulative effect. Week 6, we will be going deep on online courses. So how to choose a platform, how to set up modules and lessons, how to take payments, how to organize your assignments, and what are the different options for assignments, and what types of digital courses are there out there. Like, do you have people turn in videos, or do you have people turn in written things? And how do you mark them off as complete and give them a certificate at the end? Talk about all those things. And then we will talk about in the next week all things related to in-person teaching. So how do you set up, manage your flow and your time, class dynamics, like what happens when there's a difficult situation in the class? How do you set up your class so that you avoid some of those difficult situations? How do you answer questions, things like that? That would also apply to things like live lessons like this, where we're talking about potential class dynamics. And then in week 9, we'll go into pricing and websites and landing pages and social media and like affiliate marketing and ads and all those really important things, CE offerings, in order to build a sustainable business model. Because we're going to talk about this in a minute, but this can be a lot of work. As you can imagine, it's a lot of work. And you want it to be sustainable for you and your lifestyle and what you're trying to get out of it. Week 10 is where we will hopefully by this time have the tools to teach our own mini lessons. So each of you will be teaching something. I'll give you this assignment earlier on so that you're preparing for it along the way. And ideally, we're going to do this during our live lesson, but depending on how many people we have and like how many people show up and all that good stuff, it's likely that some of this will be recorded as well. Like you'll record your lesson, drop it in the community, and people will comment on it. So once you complete that week assignment, then you can book a one-on-one session with me where we'll go through like your own personal needs. Like, what do you need from me in order to help you to get your stuff together? Week 11 and 12. So in 11, we'll take all of our assignments and activities up to this point and start finalizing plans for your offering. So making sure that everything is nice and planned out. And if you have any content that you've built along the way or you need help building content, that's what we'll focus on that week. And week 12 will be our graduation. So we'll finalize our marketing plans, our content plans, things like that. So I have the last 2 weeks set aside to not be super content heavy because that allows us to be flexible with our live lessons. Like if we need to go back and cover something, if there's something we missed, if there's something new that comes up, like recurring question or theme along the way, then we can spend some of that time there, or we can use them as co-working sessions. If you guys have ever done live co-working sessions, they can be really helpful just for like the body mirroring aspect of like sitting together and doing work and being able to ask questions if you need, being able to share your screen and get feedback, things like that. So we will save those 2 weeks to be a little bit lighter just for all of those different aspects. So part of the reason that I had a hard time putting this together for multiple years is because it does take a lot of time and energy for you as a learner. And I was really worried that I would end up getting people who enrolled because they really wanted to do it, but then they weren't able to commit to it. So I just want to make sure that, you know, you guys have a really good understanding of what the investment is, not just financially, but energetically, so that you know that you're in the place to do this. Because I want everybody to be successful. I don't want you to waste your money. I want you to actually do what you want to do. You know, I just really hope that it's not what my fear was, but for that reason, I'm being transparent with you, right? So the cost is $1,000. That is for this specific group. So we'll start in January. This is the beta testing cohort, meaning that you're getting access to this for this discounted price because we need to test everything out and see how it goes. And there will be a form at the end for you to give feedback, and of course, places to give feedback along the way. So for future cohorts, if we need to change anything, I have that information. And then I'm also giving you the opportunity to earn $200 back by contributing to the free course library. So once you're done with everything, like you finish all your assignments, you finish everything, then you can submit a video to me up to 30 minutes with some resources, handouts, whatever, that will go in the free library. So it's not something I'll make money off of. It's basically something I'm paying you $200 to do, to add into our free course library, give our free members some extra content, but also give them exposure to you and give you an opportunity to market your courses. So if you want to push people towards what you're offering, then that's a great place to do it. Time-wise, I do anticipate that this will take you, content-wise, live lessons and things like that, it's going to take 3 to 4 hours a week, but it will take more if you're focusing on building a class at the same time. So if you're trying to build content and you're trying to plan, you could maybe designate a whole day to doing this a week in order to focus on those things, or maybe split it up 4 hours one day, 4 hours another day. That way you are focusing in on doing all of the things that you need to do, and just keeping in mind that this work is not easy and it takes a lot of work and energy before you see payoff. Sometimes it takes me multiple days sitting at a computer just to get ready to launch a class, let alone all the work that it takes to actually teach the class. But once it's done, your online classes become recurring revenue, and they're pretty passive unless you have a lot of assignments that you have to follow up with, or like a community aspect or live lessons for things like that. And for in-person classes, for me now, it's like I just print my stuff the day before. I have all my manuals, and then I have like a pre-packed bag full of all the things I take to class. So it makes things easier along the way, but in the course of planning, it feels like you're doing a lot of work for nothing. So that's just the reality of it, right? In terms of transparency, it takes a lot to get a class going. And there are ways to make it easier and ways to make it harder on yourself. And once you get into the flow of doing it, it becomes a lot easier. I will say, like, now when I'm like editing a video, let's say for a class, it could take me 20 minutes versus in the past, it would take me like an hour, 2 hours to edit one video. I've gotten a process now, and things run a lot smoother. So that's that. That's all I have for you. So I'm going to put on the next slide. The next slide has the link for enrollment, and it also has the web. So if you want to go back through and read everything that we talked about, then that's where you would do it. And then at the end is the enrollment link. The course is currently limited, and I am contemplating whether we need more spots or not, but really what that changes is like how everybody teaches their lesson at the end, and things like that. Because if we have too many people, then we won't all be able to present live, right? So it may change some of those aspects if we have more people. I haven't quite decided what that's going to look like. And then, eventually I will add more cohorts to this for later in the year. So if this timing is not something that works for you, then there will be more opportunities. Just keep in mind, like, the pricing is absolutely going to change. Based on my market research, people are charging a lot more for things that take this amount of time. For me, I'm fine with the energetic aspect of it. So this works for us to test everything and see how everything goes. And I'm super excited for that. I will tell you, the website has like a huge FAQ thing where I thought of all the questions people might possibly have and like sectioned them out by type of question. And so you can actually drop down and read through. You can do whatever you want. Absolutely. So if you're going to start your class and then go back and revise things, totally. Like, this is for you. It's not, there's no requirement, right? Except for you turning in your assignments when we have assignments due, your classes. Like, I know a lot of people already have classes going, and so they're just looking to maybe do some revision or like change how they're doing things, and that's totally fine. We can definitely talk about that. So that will be during like our digital tool lesson, and talking about like video quality, lighting, what's necessary, what's not necessary, issues. A lot of the issues come from what I've experienced, let's say doing things online. I can have the best video quality, but Zoom is always going to downgrade that when it records. So like you can see now, probably I look really nice and clear. And then in the recording, I'm going to be a fuzzy mess, because that's just what Zoom does. So we'll talk about those types of things, and also editing, like easy editing tricks, how to do that in a way that is very simple. The deadline for sign up is December 1st. So I'm trying to give you guys time, but also give myself time to plan. So because I want to be able to customize things for who is in the class, it's going to help me to be able to see who's there and what their needs are and what they're looking for. December 1st is the deadline that I have in place. Yeah, there's payment plans. You can either pay upfront, or you can pay half and half, and that's automated. So it's like half this month, half next month, or you can do $200 a month for 5 months. So those are the 3 payment plans I set up. So if nobody has any other questions, or if you do, email me or text me or whatever you want to do. And I am excited to see who signs up and what amazing things that everybody creates.